Okay, here we are. 1565, the Siege of Malta from Worthington Games, Great Sieges system. I have got the game set up here. The Turks, the Ottomans in green, the Knights, the Christians in white. I will be playing for this first learning game. This is my first time playing the system, and I just read the rules. It seems pretty straightforward. I will be playing the Turks. I'm going to be trying and taking the island of Malta and conquering the fort of St. Elmo and possibly the fort of St. Angelo and St. Michael here. Now, the game starts in this state, and because I'm playing the Turks, I have access to these two special resource tracks. I've got Turkic musketry, which I can use before I roll the dice to get -1 to the roll. Lower is good for the Turks here. And I've got the Janissaries, which they'll allow them to re-roll a die. Both of these tracks have 3 uses, and then they are gone for the scenario. If you were playing the Knights of St. John, they would have similar here, Greek Fire and Elite Knights. We've got some spaces on the board where units can show up later. So, for example, the Corridon Heights here, you can get a Turkish unit, I believe, can show up here. The Heights of St. Margaret can get some reinforcements from the Christian player who come, I believe, from Medina, or possibly, yeah, and then there's some units in Sicily that can arrive. Turkish ships can sail to Marsa Creek. And there's also Gallows Point here. And so the repositioning of units will grant bonuses to specific actions. You can see that there's a concept of the Turkish control of the Grand Harbor. They need to have at least 1 ship marker here in Marsa Creek, and they need to occupy both Corridon Height and Gallows Point up there. That would be fully surrounding the Christians. So essentially the way it's going to work is every turn, I'm going to select an order from a menu of available options for the Turkish player. Then I'm going to draw a card from this Knights of St. John deck, of which I have prepared before the game. I decided that I would go with an average skilled opponent. So what's interesting about this is that there's a deck of cards for your opponent. You choose a certain number based on how difficult you want to make them. So the more difficult the opponent, the more cards will be in this deck. And then the cards you don't use, if you, like for example here I chose 24 and there's a pile of cards I didn't use, those go into the box, you don't use them. So there's some variability game to game, which is really nice. But essentially I'm going to choose my order, I'm going to flip a card, we're going to see what the counter order is going to be to my order, and then there might be some special events. I will roll the dice, we'll see what happens. I am learning the game. I am probably going to make some strategy mistakes for sure, but we're going to get going here, and I'll just take you through. This shouldn't take too long. It should be a pretty short video, and we'll see how the Siege of Malta unfolds for the Turks. I'm hoping to avoid the historical result, which was a major disease outbreak in the Ottoman camps, attrited them to the point where they had to give up the siege, and the Knights of St. John held out. So with all that said, let's get going, and I will explain any special considerations we need as we continue. Okay, so the first thing I've decided to do here is the Turks. We've got these Christian knights here in Medina on the western side of the island of Malta, while the siege is happening here. Down here in the east, we've got this fleet of Turkish ships. Now, I would like to get some of these ships, at least one, here into Marsa Creek to control the harbor navally for the siege. However, there's a bad modifier to trying to move. One of my orders is I can move ships. So there's a bad modifier to trying to move ships here unless I can eliminate some of these units in Medina. So I think the first thing that I'm going to attempt to do for the siege here is I'm going to attempt to attack Medina from the Turkish camp at Marsa here. And so what we're going to do there is we're going to choose the attack Medina option. And it's kind of a 50-50 chance here, but, you know, potentially could be better if the Knights choose something else. So let's flip a card and see what happens. We get a wall breach. So this is a special event, and then here is the actual event. So we do this second, and we do this first. So this is Defend St. Angelo, which is actually the worst possible counter order for this particular operation I'm trying to do. I roll 1 die. On a roll of 1 to 2, increase Turk morale by 1. So these are the morale tracks here. If you can get, if you get to 0, if you get your opponent to 0, which in this case the Christians 0, I will win. If they get me to 0, I will instantly lose. Unfortunately, this event, which is helpful to me, is not going to do anything because I'm at full morale. So then we'll do the special wall breach event here, and this event is, I believe, adding a reinforcement. So add 1 knight's reinforcement marker to Sicily, which is going to be up here. So this is the relief force, I believe, that was trying to be sent and gathered to Malta. If there are already 3 markers, move all 3 to the Heights of St. Margaret. Well, there won't be. If any markers are already on the Height of St. Margaret, roll a die and apply these results. So not a terrible event to start the game. But let's grab part of this relief force, sorry about my finger, and we're going to put them in Sicily. They're gathering up here, potentially to sail. So we have done that, and so now I get to carry out my order. So their counter order here is defend St. Angelo. And if we look at the attack Medina, this order here, defend St. Angelo is here, which means that there's a 1/3 chance I will score some casualties to the to myself. Actually, yeah. So the green box, I believe, is is to me. So this is actually the better one. Sorry, I misspoke. So when it's in the white box, that affects the Christian player. If it's in the green box, it affects me. That's actually good for me that they chose the right one. So my fear was unfounded. So they're defending St. Angelo, and St. Angelo is this fort here. So while they're committed resources to defending here, they're not committed to defending the western part of the island. So we will roll the d6 and see what we get. We got a 1. That's probably really good. It is. So that is going to be 1 casualty here in Medina. We've managed to knock out some of the Christian knights here, and that is also going to be a morale hit because they took a casualty. Now they're still at 10, but as you can see, the morale track gets a little more fragile the longer we go. So very good. That is the end of the first turn, and we're just going to keep doing that essentially until the game is over. So now here's the rub. I used order number 3, which was attack Medina. So what I do here is I'm going to put this out. I'm going to play this here. Order 3 used. I cannot pick that order again until it refreshes. I have to pick something else, or I can use an aggressive commander action. Now, an aggressive commander action is in addition to the order I pick, and there's its own table for an aggressive commander action. And there's a couple things you can do with this, which I will explain if I decide to use one. But when you use an aggressive commander action, you actually refresh all of your used orders. So this is how you get orders back to be able to attack Medina again, for example. Now, the downside is that you only get 4 aggressive commander actions for the game. So really figuring out when to use those and refreshing the orders that you need at that specific time is critical. I could use all 7 of my orders, or 7 of my orders, but that's a lot of time going by. That's 7 cards out of the deck, and if this deck runs out, I actually lose. So I can't just really efficiently just use all my orders and then refresh and get 28 actions, because that might not be enough. There's only 27 cards in that deck. If I don't win in those cards, then I will lose. So I've got to think about the next thing that I want to do here, and I will do that and come back. Okay, so for my next turn, I think what I've decided to do, I have a couple options. One, I can try and attack the fort at St. Elmo with the force here on the St. Elmo approach. Now, the chart for that can be very good, or it can be very bad, depending on what the counter order is, or somewhere in between. Pretty straightforward there. I might try and do that, but I think in the meantime, what I would like to do, before I do that, I think I would like to get some Turkish units moved to one of these heights around the harbor, because that's going to give me some good DRMs if I can control the Grand Harbor. So what I think I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a move troops order. That's order number 6. And that is going to potentially let me I get to move up to 4 units from one location to any other location. And so I think what I'm going to do is probably try and move to the Corridon Heights. And I'm going to try and move a unit here from the Marsa. I'm going to march them across the island and try and move here. So let's see what the counter order we get is. So first of all, we get Fire Ship. Remove 1 fleet marker from Marsa Creek and place it at Marsaxlock. Well, we don't have any ships at Marsa Creek, thankfully. So there was not a Christian fire ship attack. They chose defend St. Angelo. And so if we look at move troops and defend St. Angelo, we can see we have a pretty good chance of success. So let's roll that up. And I rolled a 6. So that means I failed. I failed to move my units, which is really bad. Not great. And so that order is expended. Now, I'm not going to be able to try and move again until I refresh that. So that was not a great outcome for what I was trying to accomplish. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to use order number 1. And we're going to make an attack here on the fort at St. Angelo. So order number 1 is used. And we're going to draw a card. And they have gotten Turkish fleet departure. That doesn't sound good. And they chose defend St. Angelo, which is really bad. So if we look here at the attacks, so defend St. Angelo. So it's a 50-50 chance. If they had chosen defend St. Elmo, there was a guaranteed loss, potentially up to 3 losses there. But first, before we do that, we need to do the Turkish fleet departure. Let's roll a die and see what happens there. Don't want my fleet leaving. I rolled a 2. Turkish fleet departs late. Add 3 cards to the remaining draw deck from the unused draw deck cards. So that makes the deck larger, which is good in that it gives me more time, but bad because it gives them some extra capabilities. So I will do that right now, and then I will roll to see what happens. Well, actually, I can roll that now, and then I'll add the cards, and we'll come back. Let's see. Here we go. They're defending St. Angelo down here. I'm attacking up at the fort on the peninsula. I rolled a 4, and unfortunately, that is going to be a 1 casualty here to the Turkish forces. Sadly, that's also going to lower my morale. So, yeah, this particular beginning of this siege is not going well for me. The Christians are putting up a pretty stout defense, and they haven't even had the advantage of some good cards coming out for them. So I'm going to add the 3 cards to this deck, and then we'll come back for my next move. All right, so with my third turn here, I've decided I'm going to launch the artillery bombardment of the fort at St. Angelo, which is over here. So the Turkish forces are going to launch a bombardment. That's going to be order number 4, bombard St. Angelo. Now, when I do that, I have to expend my Turkish ammunition here. So my Turkish ammunition, I've only got 4 of them. Once I get to 0, there's a really painful modifier for this roll. So I better make this count. So we're going to spend 1 ammunition to do the bombard St. Angelo. I must have markers on the gallows point or Birgu approach. I do have units on the Birgu approach, which is fine. I have to reduce the ammunition, and yeah, here we go. So let's let's draw the event and we'll see what happens. So Ottoman morale. If none of Fort St. Elmo, Fort St. Michael, or Fort St. Angelo have fallen, roll 1 die. On a roll of 1 or 2, reduce Turk morale by 1. So the lightning blitz has not gone as planned, apparently, and the Turks have lost morale. I rolled a 3, so no effect, thankfully. But we do have a special event here, and that is remove the siege tower marker from the board. If already removed or it is not yet placed, ignore. Okay, so I haven't built the siege tower yet. So that's good. I actually thought about building the siege tower this turn, but I was like, I'm sure there are events in the deck that take it away. What's good about the siege tower is it gives you modified die rolls if you make an attack on St. Angelo. But obviously, I want to soften them up with some bombardment first. So let's roll that. Their counter order is defend St. Angelo. So we are here. So it's a 1/3 chance. I'm actually, in this particular case, I'm actually going to use some Turkish musketry. Use some Turkish musketry here to get a -1 DRM to the roll to make it a little bit better for me. So I have to do that before I make the roll, and so we're going to get a -1, and we're on this column here. Excuse me, they're on defend St. Elmo. This one here. They're on this one here. So it's actually a little bit better. So we're going to get a -1. So on a 4 or less, I'm going to do some morale damage to them. Let's see what we get. I got a 1, which is the best possible result I could have gotten. That's the kind of luck I'm looking for. So with the defend St. Elmo, because again, defend St. Elmo, and we're doing bombard, we do a -2 morale hit to the Christians. That is huge. That brings them to there. And then we cover here the bombard St. Angelo order. So I've only got a couple options left now, and I'm thinking this might be the time when I use an aggressive commander action. Now, it should be noted that if I move ships, I can't use an aggressive commander action. And if I attack the Grand Harbor, it's really bad because, well, I actually can't do that yet because I don't think I can do that yet, because I don't control the harbor potentially. I'll look at that. I can attack St. Angelo. And, if I play, that might be the play, because if I use an aggressive commander action with that order, I can actually build the siege tower, which gives me a -2 modifier. Now that this event has come out, I feel a little bit safer building it. So I think that's what we're going to do next. We're going to go ahead and do an attack action against St. Angelo from the Birgu approach. And I do have troops there. I'm going to go ahead and use my first aggressive commander action, and I'll show you how this works. So I can do a couple of things with that. One, I can use once per turn. I can use it to place a siege marker tower on the board. And yeah, so then we're going to roll on this table as well with the black die. So we're going to actually roll 2 dice, and these are cumulative. So the white die is going to apply to this order, the black die is going to apply to this order, and we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, we're going to build the siege tower there, which is great because when I build the siege tower, it's -2 modifier to die rolls on order 5, which is what I'm doing right now. So let's see what the knights have in store for me. Conflict in Turkish command, probably not great. Turk order canceled this turn, or I continue with order played with a +2 modifier. So I guess this represents the, the rivalry between Mustafa Pasha and Piali Pasha, who, of course, if you know anything about this, were bitter rivals, and basically their rivalry jeopardized the success of this siege. So I have to decide this here. I definitely don't want my orders to be canceled because I have my aggressive commander action. So I'm just going to go ahead and do with the +2 die roll modifier, which essentially negates the siege tower this turn. We also get this, add 1 knight's reinforcement marker to Sicily. So again, we've got more Christians piling up here in Sicily, and they're getting ready to potentially sail in. Okay, so let's roll. Oh, and the order here, yeah, so what actually is the actual counter order here? So here's an interesting thing. There's no counter order on this card, and so I don't know which column to roll against here. I'm gonna have to look that up. Okay, so I did a quick check. Unfortunately, this is kind of one of the things that annoyed me about Freeman's Farm 1775 as well, is that a lot of Maurice Suckling games have weird errors like this, where there's just something that was left out and it was not caught in the proofing process. So I looked through the cards. It appears there are 4 copies of Conflict in Turkish Command, and each of those copies has one of the different counter orders on it. I have found St. Elmo, St. Angelo, and Defend All Positions. By process of elimination, I assume that this card should have had a Defend the Grand Harbor or a counter order on it. So I'm going to play as if that is the case. I suspect that is what is meant here, and it's just missing it. And if there's going to be a errata for this game, we will see it affect this card. But if that is the case, we're looking at this column here. Now remember, we're getting -2 for the siege tower, but we're getting +2 because I chose to go ahead with the order. Now I could choose to spend some of my valuable resources here. I could also, instead of doing a -1, I could potentially spend a reroll on this. You know, it's kind of a flat 50-50 here. I will go ahead. So it's interesting. You have to commit to your reroll before you roll. So I'll go ahead and commit to the reroll. Now, the reroll only applies to the basic order, not the aggressive order. So we're going to go ahead and do a reroll on the white die just in case. Let's see what we get. We got a 4 and a 6. So the 4 is going to mean that we take 1 morale hit, which is what I don't want. The 6 on the aggressive commander action is going to be 2 morale hits to myself, which is really bad, and I can't undo that. So unfortunately, my commander action ended up jeopardizing me. Now I am going to reroll the 4. We'll see what happens here. And we got a 5, which is worse. So we actually take 2 more morale hits. That was just a disaster all the way around, just a complete disaster. I guess the only good thing coming out of that turn is, these are numbers. These are units, not just morale. So I lost 4 units out of, each of them is also a morale hit, but I lost 4 units out of this Birgu approach, which is very, very bad. We do have some reinforcements. We're going to have to figure this out. This is not good. But I did use this, and then because I used my first aggressive commander action, I get to refresh all my orders. So I'm going to take all these back, and the whole menu of options is now available to me to move forward. All right, so I was able to march some units across the island and reinforce this approach here against the assault on Fort St. Angelo. That's great. Unfortunately, Piccolo Saccorso arrives. A small relief of 600 men and 42 knights came from Sicily. So what this did is it added another unit to Sicily, and then it also increases the knights' morale and gives them a reinforcement that they can use at Fort St. Angelo or Fort St. Michael. It says may retain until needed. They can keep this reinforcement as soon as someone goes away, they can reinforce. So I'm going to leave this card out to show that when they take a loss, they can get some of these reinforcements in there. So not great. And so I used the move troops action. Thankfully, I was successful, but the manpower hit is real here. So the next thing that I am going to do, I'm probably going to try and attack Medina again. I think that is the one that makes the most sense. And let's use the order. So we're going to attack Medina. Let's see what the event we get is. We get blockade runners. Reduce Turk morale by 1. Well, that's not good. That's not good at all. And it's another defend all positions, which is the best defense that the Christians can possibly put up. This says remove the siege tower marker from the board. That's really unfortunate. So we've lost our siege marker there. The Christians really giving us a problem here. So defend all positions with order 3. This is not a great chart to be rolling on. Do I want to use the musketry here? I could use both the musketry and the janissaries. But I feel like I want to save those for more important stuff potentially. Let's go ahead and use the musketry. I know that's probably not great, but you know what? No, let's... I can reduce the morale by 2 if I can get rid of everyone here, which would be a big help. They got their morale raised. Yeah, we'll just use the -1. Let's just use the -1. A 1, that's fantastic. So we actually eliminate a unit and do a morale hit there, which is great. So the Turks having success in the west of Malta, not so much on the actual siege. Okay. Now, what do I want to do? Maybe we try and bombard the fort again while we have the opportunity. Yeah, let's go ahead and bombard the fort again while we're here. So we're going to bombard the fort. I cannot use an aggressive commander action. Greek fire, +1 on the die roll result for the order played. Oof. Okay, so they're going to give me a +1, but it is defend St. Elmo, which is here, so it's 50-50, so it's actually not 50-50. We'll see what happens. I got to spend a Turkish ammunition. We're bombarding, and we're at +1 on the roll. That's a great roll. Okay, so -1 morale, which is fantastic. Working it all the way down. So far, the bombardment's doing pretty good. Now let's try another attack on St. Elmo. I think the time is right. Let's do another attack on St. Elmo. So, what do we get here? Heads as cannonballs. Reduce Turkish morale by 1. It's not good. The other not good thing is that they're defending St. Elmo. Valette responded to the decapitation of knights by decapitating all Turk prisoners and firing their heads from cannons. Gross. Okay, well, they're defending St. Elmo. That's here. That's really bad. We're guaranteed to take a loss there, so... do I use a reroll on this to mitigate the damage? No, I don't think I do. Let's hope that it's not bad. I rolled a 5. That's bad. That's 2 losses. So we lose 2 units here. And that's 2 more morale. Now we're getting into some very gnarly territory here. I need to turn this thing around. And so I'm going to try and do that by moving some ships. So I can move 1 ship to Marsa Creek. Let's see if we can make it happen. See, the problem here is that it's a +1 DRM because they still have units here. I'm trying to clear that out so they don't have to tie up the Navy, but we're going to try it anyways. Let's see what the event we get is. Lascaris deserts from the Turks. Well, that doesn't sound good either. +1 on the die roll result for the order. Okay. They're defending the Grand Harbor. Lascaris brought the knights a wealth of information about Turk troop dispositions and plans. Well, that's unfortunate. So they're defending Grand Harbor. It's a +1. This should be doable, but, you know, stranger things have happened. I rolled a 1, so that becomes a 2. So I am able to move one of these ships here to Marsa Creek, so that's great. That is going to let me get potentially gain control of the Grand Harbor, and I probably need to do that. I need to move a unit up there or down here. So that was move ships, which is good. That uses that. Now we've got a couple options. I could attack the Grand Harbor now that I have a ship in place. But I don't get the DRM for control of the heights. So what I probably want to do here is attack St. Angelo again and hope that it goes better than last time. So we're going to do a St. Angelo. We're going to use our second aggressive commander action, I believe. Well, actually, you know what? I don't need to do that because what will happen is if I do this order and then I do this order, while dangerous, it will refresh all of my orders because I will have used everything. do I want to risk more losses right now? I probably don't, and there's almost a guarantee that I take some morale hits on that. So we're just going to do, but then I don't have the siege tower. No, I feel like I have to do it. Okay, we're going to do a second aggressive action. So that's going to let me build the siege tower back up. That's a -2 DRM, but I do have to roll on this. Let's see what the counter order is. Troops rested. Order canceled this turn unless moving troops or ships, but increase Turk morale by 1, or continue the attack but reduce Turk morale by 1. Huh. And this would be a defend St. Elmo. So this is a tough choice. This is one of the best columns I can have, and I would be getting -2, but I would take a morale hit, which would put me perilously close here. Or I can rest my troops and gain the morale and cancel the order. It's a tough choice. I think because of where my morale is, I will actually cancel the order. And now I believe, so I don't roll, but I believe that this might refresh everything. I'm going to double check the rules and come back. Okay, so one quick mistake that as I looked in the rules again. So the first aggressive commander order that I used that placed the first time I had the siege tower, when you place the siege tower, you actually don't roll on this table. It's only if you choose to use the aggressive order for the table roll, because if the siege tower is already there or you choose not to place it, that you would roll here. So that first roll where I got a 6, where I had 2, I actually should be 2 higher on morale. So it wasn't as disastrous as I thought. And that actually changes my calculus here. So instead of doing the rest and gaining 1 morale back, since I'm only at 7, I am going to go through with the attack here, just because the column I'm rolling on is the best that it can be potentially, and I will be getting -2 because I have the siege tower. So let's do that. I'm getting -2 for the siege tower, and I'm rolling on this column. It's got to be good, right? Of course I rolled a 4. Of course, and that is a Turkish hit out of here, and I lose a morale, of course. I guess the only upside is that I do get all of my orders back here, and we play on. I get the sense that the history of this siege is going to be preserved with the way that the Turks are just throwing manpower away futilely at the fortified positions. All right, well, we completed another orders round. I'm not going to go play-by-play at this point. I'm just going to show you what happened. But some interesting stuff happened. One, we managed to get a ship to sail around here to the harbor. The Christians drove it back with some fire ships, so it had to retreat. We still have one in the creek, in the creek, which is great. We did do another attack on Medina, eliminated a unit there. We did do an attack on Fort St. Michael, did do an elimination there, which is fantastic. The bombardment didn't cause any morale loss, unfortunately. We've only got one shot left at normal strength. We rebuilt the siege tower in preparation of the next round of orders. We did make an attack here on the fort of St. Elmo and did do a loss, which is fantastic. So we've driven down the Christian morale a bunch. Sadly, the Piccolo reinforcement does come here to reinforce Fort St. Michael. So that card is over now. And we're kind of dangerously low on manpower. The other thing that happened that's huge is actually the reinforcements from Sicily wound up on the heights of St. Margaret. And they should have gotten +2 morale. So we actually did not drive it down as much as I thought we did. So they're there. Yeah, so we've got basically Christian forces coming into the rear behind these 2 siege positions, and then they got more reinforcements in Sicily. So it sounds like, you know, historically the call for help from La Valette was delayed and or sandbagged a little bit by the Christian nations of the time. In this game, they are very eager to help. They are very eager to help the Christians defend Malta. So so far, this game really does feel like a siege. I tried to get a unit here to move to the Corridon Heights, and it was interdicted, unfortunately, by the Christians. So we're going to have to try that again. But I'm about to refresh everything. And the deck, we're about a little more than halfway through the deck. And we have not made the progress we want, and my morale is dangerously low. So we'll see what happens. Okay, well, we are coming up to the sort of pivotal moment of the game. The last sort of order sequence for the Turks did not go well at all. We had another fire ship attack that drove the Turkish ships back to Marsaxlok. We did manage to move one out to try and keep the pressure on. We did successfully get some units from the Marsa here to the Corridon Heights, which is great. I do need to get one up here, but the the Christian counterattacks on my positions, or I should say the battles that I have ordered. I tried to do another attack on Medina to eliminate this final unit. Did not go well, took some losses. As you can see, the Turks one morale failure away from losing the game, and that makes it really risky to do things like attack any of the forts or the harbor with the modifiers that are in play. We also lost the siege tower again. We're going to have to rebuild that. I've only got one aggressive commander action left, and because I've only got one morale, I don't want to take the chance on some of these, so I'm going to use the aggressive commander action here to attack St. Angelo in order to get my orders back, because I'm going to try and move up here to Gallows Point. I need to play very carefully now because I can't afford to lose any more morale. So we are going to make the attack, and that is going to mean we get the siege tower back, which should, if all goes well, help us out. But let's see what the counter order is. Conflict in Turkish command is the last one, and they got Defend St. Elmo, which is here, so not the worst result in the world. The Turk order is canceled or continue with a +2 die roll modifier. And we're going to remove the siege tower. So I guess I have to cancel the order because if I lose the siege tower, which I'm about to, I think this is the last conflict in Turkish command card in the deck, but as you can see, we've only got 4 draws left, so I don't think I'm going to win the game. So I'm just going to go ahead and let that cancel. That's going to refresh my orders. And we're going to go back and see what we can do here. I think my first move is going to be to try and move a unit up here, and then probably make an attack on the Grand Harbor. I think that's probably my best bet. So I'll be back. Okay, so we got a little bit lucky. We got a troops rested card. I could cancel the order unless moving troops or ships while I was moving troops. And so that means I got to increase my morale by 1. So that did stave off defeat for another turn. Defend Grand Harbor was not a good column to roll on here with the movement, but I did roll a 1, as you can see. So we did successfully get a unit in position here on Gallows Point. And that means now that I can attack these 2 forts here with a -2 DRM. So the next thing we're going to do, and this is I think the first time in the game, maybe the second time in the game, we're going to do an attack the Grand Harbor. And we get to choose who we're attacking. I think because of the number of units here, we're going to attack Fort St. Michael. We're going to get a -2 DRM, but it's going to be really critical what a counter order we pull. So what do we get? Greek Fire, +1 on the die roll result for the order played, and Defend Grand Harbor is the column. Unfortunately, that's very bad. That's the best thing they could have drawn. It's the Turkish luck has seemingly gone that way here with the card draws on the particular end of this game, which is unfortunate. But we do have to carry through there, so it's a +1 die roll on this, which means we're going to take a loss. And of course we rolled a 6, and I of course have no more resources here, and I think that's going to end the game. Yeah, that's going to be 2 casualties. From one of these approaches, we decided we were attacking here. These 2 guys die. That brings us to morale 0, and that is enough to break the spirits of the Turkish siege and force a retreat. The Christians have held out. They've more than held out. They got reinforcements from Sicily, and it was very difficult going. There's a lot of bad luck involved, especially near the end, and I just couldn't quite get the momentum going. It was very challenging to do losses, and it seemed like every time I was drawing cards out of here on some of these final rounds, I was getting conflict in Turkish command, which was either canceling, conflict. You know, it was really annoying to get all of those back to back at a pivotal moment in the game. So it's a Christian victory, which is historically what happened. The Turks slammed their head into this wall and lost a boatload of manpower. Didn't really do much to the Christians. I would say the Christians got away a lot easier off than they did historically, maybe except for these troops down here. Yeah, that's the first play. It took me, I don't know, about an hour to play this, maybe a little less. First impressions. Well, it's interesting. It definitely tells a story, which I really like. There's sort of an emergent narrative that happens here. You could kind of see as we were playing along that especially the Christian Navy was super effective at driving off the Turkish ships that were trying to sail and take position in this harbor. It seemed like every time they got ships in here, the Christians were able to drive them out with some fire ships. The Christians, you know, the most success I think the Turks had was down here in Medina, which unfortunately we couldn't close the deal there. That would have been nice. But it was, you know, it would have been only a minor benefit. The controlling the harbor at the end was nice, although the counter order card that I got that kind of undid you know, basically, this is a dangerous attack. I mean, you've got essentially a 3 and 4 chance to not get this column, but I was at such low morale and I felt like I had to go for it. It was kind of my final thrust. So that was unfortunate, but certainly the narrative here is very strong and I really like that about it. There's key decision points you have to make. So, you know, I really like how you can't do the same order multiple times in a row. You really have to choose which orders you're going to do. And then once you've done it, you've got to do other orders. So the sequencing of your orders here and the operations that you're doing is really, really important, especially when you've seen what's come out of the deck of the opponent faction. It really makes when to use your aggressive commander orders super important. You know, I never did end up using, despite making the mistake, these aggressive orders to do additional casualties. I'm not entirely certain it's worth it. I mean, you know, for the most part, you're doing trades. The first one is okay, but after that, it gets a little dicey in here where you're sort of 50-50. I mean, you're going to take a hit almost no matter what, and you're not really getting a lot out of it. I think for the Turks, I think you want to use those aggressive orders to keep building up the siege tower, and I just couldn't quite find a gap. You know, I was unlucky, again, where I would get the siege tower up, and before I could get the order off, they would destroy the siege tower. So, it was difficult in that way, but it feels very thematic. I mean, ostensibly for a game that's about rolling dice on various combat tables, it feels very thematic. I definitely felt like I was trying to besiege this heavily fortified area and just nothing was going right, which is, you know, again, historical. The successes I did have felt very exciting. So when I was able to wipe out units here, when I was able to get these units moved into position to get ready for a big attack, my bombardments of Fort St. Angelo over here, when I did some morale hits, was very nice. It doesn't look like I did very much, but you know, they got lucky with some cards to move their morale up. This is probably a very difficult game to win. I'd be curious to see what an easy opponent looks like. I might do that next when I switch sides and play the Christians. Do an easy Turk opponent to see how easy that is. But I think as you start to learn this deck and what could possibly be in there, I think it might be a little more less difficult to win the game because you have some idea of what order you're supposed to do things in. I think it's really smart. This is a really cool system. I like that, you know, there's kind of a chance, depending on what you're going to do, how the enemy responds will change your effectiveness. And it really, in general, does feel like you are commanding a siege, because you can't ever rely on your troops. Even though you give them an order to go do something, their performance is almost, you know, super variable. And so it feels like you are the overall commander of this siege operation. And, you know, you're not into sort of the tactical nitty gritty. It's much more of an operational, strategic kind of view of things. And you're sort of at the whims of how your soldiers perform, which I think is great. On the negative side, you know, I would have to play it some more. Obviously, these are first impressions. I do think there's a high amount of variance in the game. So, as you saw at the end, you can just get a run of really bad luck that really puts you behind the 8 ball. And in general, I think, you know, whether you win or lose is going to be a lot more heavily luck dependent than other solo games. So some people may find that as a turnoff. You know, I don't particularly like really luck-dependent systems. You know, you can mitigate it in some senses here, but the timing of what card comes out and what order you're taking is out of your control. So you may just get hosed, which doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel like you could have done anything differently. But again, coming back to you being the overall commander of a siege, that does make a certain amount of sense. So, but in general, I think it's a really cool system. I do like it better than Freeman's Farm 1777. I mistakenly called it 1775 earlier. I think it's really cool. And as a solo game, I'm not a big solo game player. And I tend to do mainly games for the channel, and I don't tend to play a lot of solo-only games. But I think as a solo-only game, this is a really interesting system, and I can't wait to try the others in the series. And I also can't wait to try the others in the series 2 players. But for what it is, I think this is a really cool solo game. You know, if you want something to play like during a lunch break or after dinner, you just want a quick gaming experience, this actually really fits the bill. And I could see myself coming back to this quite a bit, actually, because specifically you can play both sides. I think that's really the genius here, is that you can choose to play the Turks on the attack. You can choose to play the Knights of St. John on the defense. And, you know, that probably feels a lot different. And so I'm probably going to reset this up and play as the Christian side and just see what that's like. You can knock out a game super fast. And like I said, the production quality is fantastic. You know, I think of all of the games in this system, you know, this is the only specifically solo game. I would say that probably Siege of Quebec or Siege of Syracuse probably has more value just because you can play it with someone else. But this is not a bad game by any means from my first playthrough. I really enjoyed this game, and I hope you enjoyed watching it with me. Let me know if you want to see more of this system on the channel. I can definitely film another one where I flip this around. or I can play one of the other games in the system, which is a different historical period and presumably has those slight tweaks to it. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what your comments are, and hope you, if this was something you were looking at, hopefully this has helped you in making a decision about whether you would purchase something like this. But again, congratulations to Worthington and all the designers for the Great Siege. Is a great product.